We're following breaking news out of Baltimore, where Lieutenant Brian Rice in the Freddie Gray case has been acquitted of involuntary manslaughter. CBS News Justice reporter Paula Reid is in Washington. Paula, Lieutenant Rice, he was the highest-ranking officer originally charged in Gray's death. Take us through the judge's decision.
Here, Meg, we have the same case, the same facts, similar witnesses, and similar charges. So it is not a surprise that Judge Barry Williams has acquitted Rice on the 3 remaining charges. Meg, at the outset of this trial, he faced 5 charges. Over the course of the trial, the judge dismissed 2 of them, second-degree murder, and 1 of the misconduct charges. What remained was involuntary manslaughter, reckless endangerment, and misconduct in office. And the big question in the case, Meg, was failing to seatbelt Freddie Gray a crime? The defense argued that it was not a crime. It was a split-second decision. Other officers who had previously been tried in this case testified that the scene at the arrest, it was chaotic and it was wild, and they chose not to seatbelt him to get him away from the scene. But the prosecution argued that that decision not to seatbelt Freddie Gray set off a chain of events that ultimately resulted in his death. Repeatedly throughout this trial, the judge looked skeptical of that and repeatedly asked them, does failing to seatbelt mean it's actually a crime? And ultimately, here we have our decision from the judge, Meg. It does not.
Paula, you mentioned the judge dismissed 2 of the original charges against Rice. How did that influence the case?
It really sort of was a preview of what to expect here today. Again, it would be very surprising if he actually was convicted on any of these charges, because we've now had 3 other previous trials, 2 of which overseen by a judge, which resulted in acquittals, 1 of which was a jury trial that resulted in a hung jury. So it would be very surprising if the same facts, the same chain of events, very similar witnesses and similar charges actually resulted in a conviction. What we're seeing as the facts reveal themselves about what happened that day is that it was a complicated decision. These officers did make split-second decisions, and whether or not you agree with them, in fact, one witness called this officer, quote, a jerk, but that does not necessarily make him a criminal under the law. And Judge Barry Williams, who has overseen all of these trials, did not believe that this conduct rose to the level of criminality.
Paula, it's a very tense time across the country between police and minority communities. How could this announcement impact that relationship?
Meg, it'll be interesting to see if we see any protests in response to this verdict. The previous 2 acquittals and the hung jury did not really result in widespread protests, unlike what we saw at the time of Freddie Gray's death and before the charges were actually filed. Over the weekend, they saw a small protest in Baltimore, some people invoking Freddie Gray's name. But what they ultimately wanted, they weren't necessarily protesting the outcomes of these trials. Those people were saying that they want a panel to oversee police conduct. They also want more money for community programs. But again, like you said, it's been such a difficult week, the past 2 weeks, especially for community and police relations. We've seen police officers shooting people, other people shooting police officers. It is unclear whether or not this verdict in particular will set off additional protests in the city of Baltimore. But again, the previous 3 trials have not resulted in widespread unrest or protests. When I talk to people in Baltimore and ask why that is, a lot of it, Meg, has to do with the judge. Judge Barry Williams, he's a former Department of Justice prosecutor. There's widespread respect for him and his legal analysis. So it remains to be seen whether or not the city of Baltimore will accept this decision as they have the previous 3.
All right, Paula Reid breaking it down for us. Thank you.